Hi class, welcome to the visualization tab for Major Assignment 3 in Math 144. This is the last part of Major Assignment 3. On this part, we are going to be working with the difference in scores that we were working on the analysis. So we're still working with that same set of data. This time we're going to be making a frequency distribution and creating a histogram based off of the difference in scores. So you should notice in this gray cells, your difference in scores have transferred over. If they have not, please make sure you go back and complete the analysis tab if you have not completed it already. And then you should see your difference in scores appear in the gray cells. For part 7, we are going to be creating a frequency distribution. There are a couple different ways to make this frequency distribution, so please make sure you follow any special instructions provided by your instructor for the specific part. When you make this frequency distribution, we are going to be dividing the data into 11 bins. We have 11 rows in the table. Each row represents a bin. So we're going to have 11 different bins, and then we are going to be dividing up the differences into the 11 different bins. Okay, so the first thing you want to start with is you need to find your bin max, your bin min, and your bin width. For your bin min and your bin max, you may need to include an appropriate buffer. This is where you need to follow the instructions provided by your instructor to figure out what appropriate buffer you need to include in this table. When you do the bin min and do the bin max calculations, make sure you use the min and max functions appropriately. So you should see the min and max functions in the bin min and bin max formulas. And then follow the bin width formula to find the bin width. The bin width should be used for 11 different bins. We need the bin width to create 11 bins in our frequency distribution table. All right, so I've calculated my bin min and my bin max. I've used my min function and my max function appropriately, and then I calculated my bin width following the bin width formula, and I made sure I found the bin width for 11 bins. Then when I go to complete my frequency distribution table, the lower limit is going to start with your bin min. So your bin min is going to be the first lower limit. And then you're going to add the bin width onto it to get the next upper limit. And then you're going to bring the upper limit down and then repeat the process. And then the very end of your table, you should end on the bin max. So here I filled in my lower and upper limits for each bin. So my first bin is starting with the bin min of -0.1, and then I'm adding the bin width of it to get my upper limit. And then I'm bringing that down, and then I'm adding the bin width, and then I continue the process for all of my bins. For each bin, you are going to give it a title. The title of the bin is going to represent the midpoint between the upper limit and the lower limit. So the title of the bin should be an Excel formula that finds the midpoint between the upper and lower limit using appropriate cell references. When you go to calculate the frequency is the number of difference in scores that fall between your limits. So the very first frequency in my table would be the number of difference of scores that fall between my lower and upper limit. The frequency function you need to use is going to depend on your instructor. So please make sure you follow the appropriate frequency function that you need to use, and you follow the appropriate boundaries. You need to determine which upper limit is included into which bin, which lower limit gets included into which bin. So make sure you follow any appropriate instructions provided by your instructor to fill out the frequency column of this table. And you can use the DQ as your model. There is a DQ similar to this. Use that DQ as your model to help you complete the frequency part of the table. Once you have the frequency completed, again, following any special instructions and the appropriate function provided by your instructor, then you can complete the relative frequency. The relative frequency is going to take the frequency divided by the total number of scores. So take the frequency divided by the total number of difference of scores we have throughout our data. Once you complete your entire frequency distribution table, please make sure you follow any special formatting directions that are provided on the major assignment. You're going to find all the directions in that part 7. So make sure you do polish it off with your formatting. And then you can move on to part 8. For part 8, you are going to find the mean difference in scores based off the frequency and the midpoints. You want to use the title of the bins, which are the midpoints and the frequency. So you are determining the mean difference in scores based off of the frequencies and the title of bins. I'll give you a hint. You can use range functions to help this be a little bit more condensed. Make sure you use an Excel formula with appropriate cell references. You want to use the midpoints and the frequency to determine the mean difference in scores for the part 8. For the very last part of the visualization tab, you are going to be making a histogram. You're going to make a histogram that models the different frequencies, and you want to use the title of the bins to label each bar of that histogram. So let's talk through how you can make your histogram. So when you make your histogram, you want to start by making yourself a bar chart of the frequencies. Once you have the bar chart of the frequencies, then you want to remove the gap between the bars and then adjust your labels appropriately. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a bar chart of my frequencies. All right, so I've created a bar chart. I have my frequencies as my bars. I want to go in, make sure I give it an appropriate chart title, and make sure I label all of my axes appropriately. Now we need to remove the gap between the bars. We need all of our bars to be touching. So we're going to right click on the bars, go to Format Data Series, and remove that gap width all the way down to 0. I have some of my bars that represent 0, so I do have some bars that are at 0, but my bars that are non-zero, you can see how they're touching here. And then after I've done that, the last thing I need to do is I need to change my horizontal axis to display the midpoints as the labels. So I want to right click on that. I want to select data so I can change my labels. I want to go in here and edit the labels. I'm not editing the series. I want to edit my labels. And I'm going to select the labels I want to use, which is the midpoints, which is our title of bins. Title of bins are our midpoints. And then so I should see those midpoints, those title of bins. The midpoints are the titles of bins. I should see those below each of my bars on that horizontal axis. And then make sure you polish this off by changing the chart title and changing your axes titles appropriately. All right, so this finishes the end of Major Assignment 3. If you have any questions, please contact your instructor and make sure you follow the special instructions for the frequency part from your instructor.